Come on in, guys. We'll start class. Now, I'm pretty sure that announcement, I think that whole announcement for class that started at 11:15 was aimed at one person who shall remain unnamed. How's everybody doing today?
We are blessed.
Blessed. And we ended on Blessed Assurance, I think was the last song, wasn't it? Blessed Assurance. I'm pretty sure I heard that every Sunday for the first year or two I was a Christian. Pretty sure I heard that one a lot. And the Fountain Free song. Okay, guys, we're going to be... I had started a lesson on called Kingdom of Small Things like many weeks ago. And I can't remember what's happened since then. I think Jim taught last week is what it was. So I don't think anybody remember that? The Kingdom of Small Things. And we just talked about the insignificant seeming nature of the kingdom of Christ. And we talked a little bit about the kingdom of Christ. It is almost equal to the church, not quite, and we may see that in some of the texts we look at. It's if you want to identify what does the kingdom look like, it looks most like the church. There's a little bit more to it than that. Good.
What's the part about the mustard seed? How it was small, but yet it expanded so much?
Yeah, so we read the mustard seed, and we're going to come back to that. So we just introduced the idea that when Jesus talks about the kingdom, he's the king, and he was bringing a kingdom to earth 2,000 years ago, as prophesied in Daniel. He said this thing's going to start small, and it's going to get big. And I think we looked at the parable of the leaven. We're going to look at that further today. And then we took a detour. We talked about the little faith, the mustard seed of faith that Jesus was often seemingly frustrated with his disciples. Trying to, you can see them struggling. They've got a little bit of faith, and Peter walks on the water, and then he sinks. And they got this demoniac, and they're trying to heal him, but they can't. And he's sighing. He's like, "Oh, you have such little faith." And you see the struggle. If you can just get the mustard seed of faith, he says, you can move the mountain. But this is the struggle that we have. So this little faith can do a whole lot. Little people, little kingdom. We're going to look at more of that here. And so today we'll talk more about how this insignificant kingdom conquers. And it does. Everything he says about the kingdom, although it's insignificant, he says this thing wins, and it's going to win in real time in this world, which is such a cool thing to study because it actually has. We can look at it and say, Jesus prophesied all this stuff about the church, and it has functioned, and it has done exactly what he said it was going to do. So we'll be in Matthew 13. I think we're going to look at all the parables of Matthew 13. If you want to turn over there. So this is maybe one of my favorite chapters in the book, in Matthew. Jesus is being persecuted. The king has come to his kingdom, but the people are starting to reject him. So in Matthew 13, Matthew chapter 12, right before this, they called him Beelzebul. He says, "You're casting out demons by the devil." And so immediately he switches from clear teaching to parables. And the parables are about how he's going to be rejected. Okay? Primarily. Most of these parables in Matthew 13, by the way, there's 7 parables in Matthew 13 about the kingdom. And most of them present the kingdom as insignificant. The last parable presents the kingdom as huge. And it's so huge that it actually has a problem. It's too big. So let's jump into it actually. Actually, we'll just go through them just to bring to your memory I'm going to read the first part of a couple of these parables because they're so long. We'll just read the parable. And if you have not done your homework and have not read the answer, you're going to have to go to Jesus and ask or read it yourself. We'll just read the parable and then we'll jump to really quickly through the smaller parables. This is a passage that's really easy to miss the forest for the trees of what's being presented, and it's a lot funner if you zoom through it, I think. So we'll zoom through it. So you got one, the parable of the sower. You got the tares among the wheat. You got the mustard seed and the leaven. You got the pearl of great price and the hidden treasure. Then you got the dragnet. So 6 of those present the kingdom as small, getting big, but then one presents it as very big, but it's got some problems in it. And everything is a perfect prediction. So let's jump into Matthew 13, and I think I'll just read, because I don't think they can hear it at home if we take turns reading. Matthew 13:3, And he spoke many things to them in parables, saying, Behold, the sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell beside the road, and the birds came and ate them up. Others fell on the rocky places where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, because they had no depth of soil. But when the sun had risen, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. Others fell among the thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them out, and others fell on the good soil and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Now, without looking at the explanation, if you could summarize this in a sentence, what is this saying about the kingdom of Christ? And everything that we read is kind of a surprising thing about the kingdom of Christ. What is this saying about the kingdom of Christ that might be different than China or the United States or any other kingdom?
You have a choice.
So this kingdom doesn't point a gun at you and say, you better obey, follow the law, or we're going to put you in a gulag or lock you in a prison or something like that, or kill you. All other kingdoms exist by the power of God, and you don't get to say no. Okay? Every kingdom in the world. The second a world kingdom puts down its weapons, it'll be taken over by another kingdom. Live by the sword, die by the sword. That's why all nations eventually fall. If the world goes on long enough, the United States will eventually fall. Every world empire, kingdom, nation has. The borders have changed consistently throughout history. This kingdom's different in that it's a kingdom of conscience. So we'll summarize it. I'll give you the freebie. Here's how I would frame it. This is a kingdom that is not received by all. Or maybe that's better. This kingdom, you get a choice, okay? So it's not a kingdom of compulsion, it's a kingdom of conscience. Well, how could such a kingdom prevail? If you get a choice. Look at verse 24. Look at the parable of no, not 24. Look at 30. Yeah, 24. Read 24 through, actually we're going to read 24 through 33. 3 parables. Tares among wheat. Jesus presented another parable to them, saying, The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went away. But when the wheat sprouted and bore grain, and the tares became evident also, the slaves of the landowner came and said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares? And he said to them, An enemy has done this. The slave said to him, Do you want us then to go and gather them up? But he said, No, for while you are gathering up the tares, you may uproot the wheat with them. Allow both to grow together until the harvest. And in the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, First gather up the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them up, but gather the wheat into my barn. So this symbolizes God sows the seeds of the kingdom, and then the enemy, the devil, sows his seeds. And you have a hard time telling the difference until there's fruit. You can't go out and start chopping heads off. And this one, I think, is the most maybe surprising and unlike other kingdoms. What would you make if you could make a succinct statement about the kingdom here? What would you say about the kingdom of Christ here? What is this parable telling us? The first one is not going to be received by everybody.
It's going to exist in a state interspersed with enemies.
So interspersed with enemies. And I may go further to look at the intent of the enemy. This is a kingdom that will be actively opposed. So all the nastiness of warfare, infiltration, spy tactics, all that type of stuff, it's going to infiltrate and actively oppose this kingdom. So wherever the kingdom of Christ, so we can look at these right here, these 2 parables. So wherever the kingdom of Christ goes, and we should say the true kingdom of Christ, do people have a choice? Now I want you to think about the church throughout history, because this has not always been the case. And you might want to ask yourself the question, whether the kingdom was in that place where they were holding guns to people's heads and saying, you have to believe this. But how does the kingdom advance today? Do you got a choice? Yeah? You say no, you can walk out the door, you can walk away. We might chase after you, but we're going to let you go. The kingdom is opposed. You see the kingdom of Christ opposed today. It exists a lot of churches in America. You see the kingdom opposed? Oh my word, viciously. Don't look on the internet, people. If you look on Facebook or in the social medias, it is just like spiritual war. And I'm such a sucker. I click on things and then they show me it, and it probably seems worse than it is, but It is just unbelievably, I have never seen it like this. There's just worldviews clashing, and there's truth, the truth of Christ, and there's all this other stuff. And it's mixed up, and you see people speaking in the name of the Christ, and they're saying just what the world is saying. Oof, there's battles being waged for hearts and minds, especially for the young people. Thank God Mac is teaching them there. Look at two more parables, verse 31 and 33 through 33. So you got the tares among the wheat, and it makes a sandwich. We're not reading the explanation, which comes after the mustard seed and the leaven. So when you see a sandwich like that, this is a chiasm. You look at the middle part of it. The center part of it is really the finale, or the most important idea. Look at 31. He presented another parable to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field. And this is smaller than all the other seeds, but when it is full grown, it is larger than the garden plants, and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and nest in its branches. 33. He spoke another parable to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 pecks of flour until it was all leavened. Now these ones actually seem more positive, don't they? These ones seem to have some positivity. How would you summarize both of them? There's a little bit different. There's a little bit different idea. What is the first, the mustard seed?
The kingdom will grow.
It's going to be huge. It's going to be honking. And guess what? Christianity is honking. It's a big old honk daddy of a kingdom right now. And so if you say, everybody who names the name of Christ, it's like 2.2 billion, which is bigger than China. China's like 1.2 billion, right neck and neck with India. So influence all over the world. Nobody can really ignore China. Some countries, or Christianity, some countries have banned it. There's like 100 and something countries where there's various levels of persecution. If you go out and proselytize, some places they'll lock you in jail. Some places people will beat you up. Some places they'll kill you. But no kingdom ignores it. Even if they reject Christianity, you cannot ignore Christianity and its potential influence. And some places do not want that influence over there. Interesting to think of, too, the kingdom. When you think of what Jesus talks about, he's a king bringing in a kingdom, and you look at the spread of Christianity, how similar in some ways it looks like a turf war. I can walk down the street and preach, and somebody might think I'm an idiot, but I won't suffer really any harm. Probably. If I go to some countries, like there's videos of people, last video I saw was in Turkey. Guy just like sets up a booth, hands out some Bible tracts and stuff, and like 3 guys from the neighborhood come and say, hey, you got 30 minutes, buddy. Pack it up. You know, and they come back 15 minutes later and threaten violence, you know. There's certain places where the enemy holds more turf. There's certain places where the kingdom seems to have less influence. Interesting in real times, interesting stuff going on in Iran, a lot of different places in the world. The battle is being waged. They say that in the next, they keep saying this, but it's supposed to be like the next 10 or 20 years, there's going to be more Christians in China than there are in the United States. And most of those Christians would be active, not nominal, because you're going to get some persecution living in China. Very interesting turf war. And that's happened in the last 50 years. But it has real effects in the world, but still it's different. It's not like the kingdoms that come in with tanks and bombs and guns. But it holds ground and it has influence. Go ahead.
I was going to say, a little bit of what you're saying is that no matter the adversity, the church will prevail. And if we have more freedom to be a Christian, it's much easier. So we take it for granted. But those people that are having hard times, it's like they're seeking more for it. The Lord has given, that I would say probably the hardship so they can search for it. Because they're really searching for it. Well, we have freedom. And over here, we just got so much freedom.
Yeah.
And we're like, I don't need to go this weekend. I can go.
Yeah. There's like 4 lessons we can teach on this about the dynamics of why some people, why is the church lean and mean in some places and it's pretty loosey-goosey in other places and weak. And persecution sometimes just makes us leaner and meaner. Worst thing you can do if you don't want Christianity to spread is to persecute it. If you want Christianity to fail, like give it a seat in your government office. Like make them part of the state, pay taxes to them. You know, it'll be like Europe. It'll be like Denmark, where everybody's baptized and nobody believes.
Yeah.
And they get tax money from the state. Very weird kingdom. It actually hurts when it takes political power, actually suffers when it takes political power, or uses guns and things like that. So, we talked about the kingdom, or the mustard seed. It's going to be huge. It's going to be the biggest garden. Old Testament, you'll see several places Nebuchadnezzar is described as a tree, and that's a kingdom. That's the kingdom of Babylon. And you see that several other places in the Old Testament. So Jesus is saying, just like Babylon, this thing's going to be big. It's going to have influence. It's going to really do stuff in the world, and it has. Good.
I think there's also something to be said about the scale aspect of it, right? So the value of the small seed, the value of the one, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's when you're facing persecution, it takes one person to stand up and fight for something what's right, cause a movement, right? And I think we see that within the church as well too. When somebody stands up in the face of adversity to fight for what's right and to speak the truth, that's when it takes hold.
Right. So this is the preached word, those seeds. And he's talking about the insignificance. So like the first part of the lesson last time we did, it was Luke 8. I love that passage in Luke 8 where it says Jesus was traveling and he had some of his disciples and had one of Herod's stewards, wife of Chuza or whatever, and then Mary Magdalene who had 7 demons cast out of her. And it's just this ragtag group with a demon-possessed woman, a former, who knows what she was into before she was following Jesus, but just this little ragtag band of people following Jesus. Part of the little stuff, insignificant. And oftentimes, like church plants, and if you've ever been a part of a church plant or so many ministries, they start out just looking like nothing. And if God blesses the thing, it takes off and it takes a life of its own, and it can become very, very big and significant very quickly, actually. I mean, Pentecost was 3,000 people in one day. You go a couple chapters, this is up to 5,000. It was just exploding. And there's been various times in history where we see the church just explode. 33, the kingdom of heaven is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 pecks of flour until all was leavened. What's the significance there? Would you say, if you put it into a phrase or a statement about the kingdom of Christ?
It's influential.
Influential. So it's going to be big, and it's going to influence the whole thing. It's going to have an influence on the whole world, a.k.a. human rights tribunals and stuff like that. All of it started in the Christian West. All of it started from Imago Dei, the image of God, which we get in our Genesis chapter 1. And if anyone sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, and all this type of stuff. So human dignity came from the Christian West. Nobody batted an eye at slavery until the Christian West. People are like, oh, those Americans are in their awful slavery. Well, American slavery was especially awful for an interesting reason, because we tried to say all men are created equal, but some people still wanted slaves, so they said, we'll just take this group of people and say they're only sort of like half people, and it became a worse form of slavery than anything existed anywhere else, because previous to United States slavery was just an unfortunate situation, but for us, it became a degradation thing. We had to degrade people in order to allow it into our system somehow. So, very interesting thing to think about, but what am I talking about slavery for? But people look at the West and say, that Christian West and the slavery, but where did slavery die? It died in Great Britain, then the United States, and it began to topple all over the world. And there's still slavery going on, mostly in Islamic places in Africa, but Christianity has had a huge influence on the world. So that's right in the middle of this parable and the explanation that the kingdom is going to be opposed, but despite the opposition, despite all the news reports that you hear, you're like, oh my word, the church is going to be gone in 10 years. No, it's going to be alive and well. Now, I don't know, some cultures the church dies or dies down and it moves to other cultures. This is why we say, like, hey, your local church can die, the universal church will not, so fight hard that your local church does not die. I want to be a part of this winning team. It's going to win. It's just a question whether we're going to be part of that that church. Whether Jesus is going to let the lampstand stay, or like in Revelation, I'll remove your lampstand from their place if you do not repent. And there's many churches in the United States that they're going to have their lampstand ripped out. They're going to make every allowance for every type of sin, and there's going to be no power. And someday, it's already happening, the people are going to say, why am I even going here? What's the point? Because it's no different.
And you know how bad it felt when Abraham was telling God, God, if there was 50, would you save that nation?
Yeah.
God, if there were 40. You know how he went down. And sometimes when I hear that, I felt so bad, you know, like, not even 10. Like, oh my goodness, how terrible it was.
Right.
So you can imagine the same thing you're saying now, you know. No matter what, the church is going to try, the universal church.
Right.
If little ones don't hang tight together and show the love to each other, it's a difficult path.
Well, now you're making me think that the nation should be thanking Christians for leavening. If we stop leavening, it's done. We're done. We're going somewhere real weird and real bad if the church stops being a pillar and support of the truth, like 1 Timothy 3 says. Okay, so let's zoom through this more. We're just going to do a zoom over lesson. So verse 44 and 45, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and hid again, and from joy over it, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking fine pearls, and upon finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. So both of these, there's a little bit difference, but there's some similarities in these parables. So both parables, somebody comes and obtains this thing of value. How much value? It's worth more than anything he got. He sells everything he's got to get this thing of great value. And this is the kingdom. What's the difference between the two parables?
One found it, one is seeking for it.
Right. One's looking. Super spiritual guy. Wasn't me. I wasn't looking. I was running away from it. Everybody was preaching to me about Jesus. I was like, not until I was absolutely miserable was I going to surrender to Christ. But one guy is searching for it. He's saying, God, where are you? He's asking, seeking, knocking. And he's going to stumble across it and find it. The other guy, it's an accident. He just stumbles across it. He's probably happy with himself and going about his life and probably headed to the bar. Who knows? But he finds this treasure and he goes, it's funny. I love the parables because you can't get caught up. It's actually kind of sketchy if you find a treasure in somebody's field, to not tell them, go secretly buy the thing without telling them, without disclosing what you found. That's not really Christian ethics, but in the parable, there's just one, it's just usually making one point. It's just saying he found something precious and he did everything he could to get this thing. Sort of like Jacob wanted that. For all of Jacob's nastiness, one thing you can say about him, he wanted that blessing from God. A God he didn't know yet. He would do anything. He would steal. He would risk his life to get that blessing. This is what this guy here is doing. So do you see people doing that? Do they find the king? Do you see people finding the kingdom, stumbling on it, and some seeking for it, and exchanging everything? Sure enough, and it always looks the same, and those people smell the same. They got this, well, I won't say they literally smell the same, but they've got the essence of Christ. And it's a very similar thing. Everybody who converts, they feel like the same kind of person in a certain way, even though they're so different sometimes. That's the amazing thing about Christianity, to get the unity of the Spirit drawing us together. We've experienced the same kind of a thing. So all these things are, something about the kingdom is small. It's a tiny little thing. It's got great influence. It's going to be opposed. It's not going to be forced upon people. Going to start out teeny, and yet it's going to conquer. And yet people are going to find value in this kingdom. It's not going to be like they're going to go out and preach and people are going to be like, oh, this is stupid. I read about a guy who went to the Amazon and he was preaching to a tribe called the Piraha tribe. This is weird. Go read this. And this guy was deconverted. He went down there to preach and he found this tribe, and they have one of the weirdest languages in the world. They can whistle to each other and still understand the words because it's a tonal language. But he goes down there and preaches for like 20 years, and they do not receive the gospel. And they had a rule that if you weren't connected they didn't care about the past and they didn't care about the future, they just cared about the present. So frustratingly, they would not receive the gospel after 20 years. There's a couple places that are really hard to receive the gospel in the world. Jesus says it's not going to be like you're going to go out and preach and nobody's going to receive it. People are going to receive it. So anywhere you go, I've shared the story to go to China. When you find, it was really felt like this is not going to work. Because some of these people, Jesus might as well be Santa Claus. They've never heard any of it. Everybody in their family is going to think they're an absolute freak, and they do when they become a Christian. And we think, how's this going to work? And yet, we saw people actually come to faith in Jesus, and it was like magic, because it was magic. It was spiritual. Go ahead.
But their representation of Christianity is very important too, because you imagine if you were a drunk and trying to preach the gospel, what would people do?
Right.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, don't
Why do I want to be like that guy?
Right.
But if your representation as a Jesus disciple is good, then people look at you. Wait a minute, I want to be part of what he is. I want to be the way he is. So sure, I want to. Just tell me more about it. People are the willingness to how you represent Jesus. Just put it that way.
Right. Sure. Well, he says it's going to happen, and it's going to keep on going. People have predicted, many communist leaders have predicted the demise of Christianity. Philosophers, Nietzsche was worried that one of his teachings, his writings, described a man who comes out with a light lantern and says, "You killed God." And he's like, "Oh no, what have we done? We've killed God." That was part of Nietzsche's, the philosopher's concern. We've gotten rid of God. This was the 1800s. People were thinking, okay, religion is done. Christianity's done. We've got machines now and science and stuff like that. If they could see today, they would see that Christianity has spread, even has invaded so many parts of Africa that were untouched. Asia, it's gone all over the place. It's not dead in America. The only places it really dies is when you got a high church structure and the people aren't equipped to preach and there's heavy persecution, like in some communist lands, or when the church becomes part of the government. And it's the only place that it does not seem to, it can be killed. Look at the last parable. This one differs a little bit, verse 47. We'll read through 51. Actually, we'll read through 40 or through 50. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet cast into the sea and gathering fish of every kind. And when it was filled, they drew it up on the beach, and they sat down and gathered the good fish in the containers, but the bad they threw away. So it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come forth and take out the wicked from among the righteous, and will throw them into the furnace of fire. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So a couple years ago, VBS, we had a little cast nets. Has anybody fished with a cast net in here before? So, we got some cast nets, and there's the pool outside, and they would stand on a bucket. And the cast nets are the kind you kind of ball it up, and then you just throw it, and it kind of turns into a big ring, and it's got weights. And then there's a hole in the middle, and there's a rope going in there, and it kind of goes down, and then you pull the rope, and it scoops all the fish up. And you got to aim it, and it's about, maybe 10 feet wide at most. That's a cast net. This is a drag net. And these can be like up to a half mile or a mile long. There's like commercial fishers that they got multiple ships, and it's got floats at the top, and it's got weights at the bottom, and they just pull it. They just pull this huge thing, and there's just, the number of fish that they catch is just unbelievable. And so they scoop them up all on the deck. And you can look at videos of fishermen doing this. They take the good fish and they throw out the fish they don't want. Throw out the bad fish. How would you summarize this, put this into a phrase? What's the parable trying to say about the kingdom? That would be maybe startling. If you're a Jewish person waiting for the kingdom to appear, you have expectations. How does this differ? I'm giving you hints.
That God is going to make a choice whether we each other or not.
What?
He's going to pick.
Yeah. Well, he's going to have to because of the nature of this kingdom. He's going to have to make some choices at the judgment. What can you expect about this kingdom if you look at it on planet Earth today? What are you going to see in it?
First off, it's going to be just. I think it's going to be according to a set rules and structure. And then also, too, that not everybody's going to meet the standard.
So but in the parable, when is the justice? When does it happen? So what about now? If I look at the kingdom now, what should I expect to see based on this parable in the kingdom? What should I expect to see some hints of here and there? I should see some good and I should see some bad. Jesus said so. He says, and so in Christendom, not all that glitters is gold. You know, Paul's like preaching Acts 20, calls the Ephesian elders. He says, I know that after my departure, savage wolves will come in among you. There's been heresy after heresy after heresy throughout history. There's been all kinds of stuff. There's scandals. Every 5 years we hear about another big one on the news, but there's little scandals. There's just doctrinal complete departures. There's just heresies, people completely departing from the Christian faith. There's mixed bags. Clint's been preaching through the 7 letters of Revelation 2 and 3. And what do you see? You see some churches, Jesus is just praising them, just hold on to your faith. You're going to get the crown of life. Some churches he's saying, oh, you got this, but you're doing this. They're a mixed bag. Other churches, he's just saying, repent. I'm about to take your lampstand away. You see the churches are mixed bags. And Jesus is trying to minister to these churches. So why might this parable here, why might this be helpful to a young man like me who's considering Christianity, but he's got some problems? Why might this parable be helpful?
To not be discouraged.
Ding, ding, because I remember thinking the first couple years as a Christian, I'm like, well, I want to be a Christian, and I can't even figure out what's true because this is such a mess. How discouraging, but then look what Jesus said. So guess what? That's going to be a part of your faith. This is going to be a part of the test of faith, whether you're going to discern truth when you receive the truth, whether you're going to receive that kingdom seed. You know, Matthew 7, part of the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew 5, 6, and 7. Chapter 5 is about taking the law to the heart. Chapter 6 is about complete devotion. Seek the kingdom first. Chapter 7 is all about discernment and judgment. And you have to discern. You can't get off. You can't just put this on your preacher because he can trick you too. So if the preacher's doing anything good, he's teaching you so you can discern. So this is when I look at this, I am just amazed. Everything Jesus said came true. If I wanted to disprove Christianity, I could just go say, well, okay, what did Jesus say? Some things about the church. I come to Matthew 13 and say, oh no, you got that one right. You got that one right. You got that one right. He didn't like sell us some like bait and switch thing. It's going to be amazing and everything's perfect. He told us exactly how it's going to be. And it has functioned that way. And this century, more than any other century, to look at the parable of the mustard seed becoming the largest and the leaven influencing, I think we see that more than ever. We're at a place in history where we can see this way better than you could have seen it 5 centuries ago. Way better than you could have seen it 1,000 years ago. So this is really cool stuff. But it's a kingdom of small, insignificant, that gets big. How might this just inform, like what kind of things when you read about the insignificant part? Let me back up and say, how does the kingdom seem insignificant to you when you look at it, when you see it? In what ways might it look just like, nothing?
There's so much bad in the world, so little good. It seems small in relation to the world.
Right. So the bad just seems to outweigh, right, sometimes. So that maybe the tares seem to just be all over the place. There's just incredible amounts of tares among the wheat. Well, just what Jesus said. Totally. I mean, if the evil in the world doesn't bother you, I just think you got to be a little indignant to be a Christian.
Yeah, I was going to say that people tolerate evil more than good. So that just shows in the world that people are just not.
So there's a view of Revelation called postmillennialism, and this was a view held in the churches of Christ. A lot of churches of Christ held this view up until World War I, and the view was that everything was there was technology was advancing, the gospel was going to all these new places. Like I said, it's been spreading a lot in the last couple centuries. America was sending out missionaries like crazy. They had this view that everything was going to be so good, I can't quote the verse, all the farming implements were going to be beaten into, or all the swords were going to be beaten into plowshares. I got it right. And everything was going to be perfect. And then Jesus would say, it's perfect. Everybody's received Jesus, and then he would descend. And World War I almost killed that view. Anybody, can you figure out why World War I kind of wiped that view off the map? It's still out there, a few places, but very few people. Why would World War I kill that post-millennial view? That the kingdom would just spread and everyone would be perfect and Jesus would come down?
Because there was war all over the world.
Because they saw, oh no, our technology just helped us to build bigger bombs. Now we can just sit in trenches and just meat grind each other. I mean, there was never a war like the First World War. It was just horror. They were shaken from this delusion that they were going to achieve even a Christian utopia is a lie on this earth. What else? Insignificant. How does it appear insignificant? Let me ask you this. Is a pan of brownies or chicken soup when you're sick, does that seem insignificant? Not to me when I'm sick. Bring it on. But I mean, a lot of people wouldn't even notice, there's that lady bringing some soup over there, whatever. Well, that's the kingdom. There may be a soul that's being transformed, won over by some soup. The gospel and some soup, maybe winning that soul. We should.
Also, the respect to the elders and stuff like that. You don't see that a whole lot.
What's that?
Also, to respect your elder. You know how back in the days, you used to be like, sir, ma'am, like a lot of respect. I've seen them lost nowadays. Like people are more careless now.
Right. Well, I was there with the high schoolers, and we talked about this a while ago. And I can remember how I felt about the church as a young man. I thought I hated it. I did not like it. There was just nothing there for me. It was either kind of disgust, it ranged to just indifference, because for me as a young man, I went in there and they were just like, I thought people were, oh, hey, young man, very nice. It was too effeminate. It smelled like perfume. There was no fire. There was no bombs going off. There was no motorcycles. There was nothing that I thought was powerful or big or cool or whatever. And that wouldn't change for me until I came into the church and my life got transformed and I was desperate. Oh, then I saw the power of it. But it can seem, I know to a lot of young men, I know this, there's a lot of young men that church just doesn't seem like much to them. And they see, when you're a young man, I think, except for your grandma, a lady over 60, you just don't have any relation to her whatsoever in their culture. At least that was me. I just felt like the church was so weak, it was almost nothing. But the church is the most powerful of all the kingdoms, God.
I think there's also that aspect of we're in a current society where everything is on demand and it's constantly bombarding and at our fingertips. You think it, you say it, there's less filters. But your lesson today on waiting on the Lord, I think is something that's where I see it.
That's good too. Like a bunch of people waiting on the Lord. We're writing Psalms because we're miserable sometimes. My God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? If you don't look up Psalm 22, I had somebody very close to me said, how can you believe in Jesus? He said, my God, why have you forsaken me? He turned his back on God on the cross. It's like, no. He was quoting the 22nd Psalm, which is a prophecy of him being crucified and overcoming, and God has not turned his back on him. But it seems, all of it, so much of it seems insignificant, so much so that if you want to ignore it, you can. And maybe you can keep your conscience sort of away from being pricked if you want to. It'll kind of fly under the radar, but if you close your eyes for too long, it's going to grow. Every time you close your eyes, it's going to be doing stuff. That is encouraging to me. I'm going to zoom through like one more idea here, wrap it up. So this little kingdom, which grows to be the biggest, but it doesn't do it through guns and power and traditional, the way we think about a kingdom. And Jesus says in Luke 17 that it's not coming with signs. You're not going to say, look, it's over here, over there, but it's in your midst. It's going to be invisible. You're not even going to be able to see it, a lot of you. How do we treat people in the kingdom if that's the case? So the little kingdom gives prominence to the least of its members. Matthew 18, 1 through 10, if you want to turn over there. I'll just zoom through a couple passages and just summarize in like 1 minute here.
Matthew 18.
Matthew 18, 1 through 10. Is this cool? Am I the only nerdy person here who's just like amazed by this stuff? I think this is so cool and so countercultural, and but so true, and history has the receipts. I just can't believe it. It's just amazing. There's no other faith like this. There's no other faith that's even trying to do this. That's even trying to say, here's how it's going to happen, and then you can check me on this. This is amazing. Matthew 18, 1 through 10. And at that time the disciples came to Jesus and said, who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And he called a child to himself and set him before them and said, truly I say to you, unless you are converted and become like children, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever then humbles himself as this child, as he is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, it would be better for him to have a healthy millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depth of the sea. Woe to the world because of its stumbling blocks, for it is inevitable that stumbling blocks come, but woe to that man through whom the stumbling block comes. If your hand or foot causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it from you. It is better for you to enter life crippled or lame than to have 2 hands or 2 feet and be cast into the eternal fire. If your eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out and throw it from you. It is better for you to enter life with 1 eye than to have 2 eyes and be cast into the fire hell. See that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I say to you that their angels in heaven continually see the face of my Father who is in heaven. So the disciples say, who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And now they don't have pure motives. They're saying, which one of us is the greatest? And the sons of Zebedee, their mother comes and says, let my son sit at your right hand and left. It's that going on. They're saying, who's the greatest? Wink, wink. And he says, okay, oh, you want to play that game? Grabs the child. You got to become like this child. So he says you got to humble yourself like a child. That's the greatest. What does he mean by that? And what is the example he gets? How do you do it? If you want to be great, what we just went through? What does he say to do?
You got to go back to your innocence as a child.
Which is to humble yourself like a child. And how does he specifically, what does he say to focus on if you want to be great? To humble yourself that way.
You need to serve.
You need to serve.
Remove sin.
Huh?
Remove sin.
Deal with your sin. So, now, have you ever heard the do as I say, not as I do thing from the parents? Right. Anybody have a do as I say, not as I do parent? I got that, but only when I screw up. Okay. It's funny, you find out like okay, there's swear words, but then there's these other words you don't really realize I probably shouldn't say them until you have kids. And then they say it. Oh, I shouldn't say that. But he says, okay, if you want to be great. Now, CEOs of companies are not thinking about the lowest person at their company. The minimum wage worker or whatever. They're just not. And he's going to talk about church discipline in here, and if the CEO wants to get rid of somebody, get rid of them. Get rid of half the company. They can do whatever they want, and they can make other people do it for them. In the church discipline, he's going to say, if your brother sins, go and show him his fault in private. Everything he says in this chapter, he's going to say, you got to humble yourself. Peter says, my brother sins against me later in this chapter. How many times should I forgive him? 7? Jesus tells him a little parable. 70 times 7. Humble yourself, humble yourself, humble yourself. He's going to say the sheep goes astray, what do? Lost him, dead weight. Well, a lot of CEOs would say, okay, have fun. He says, go after it, leave the rest, go after the everything he says in this chapter. You want to be great in the kingdom, you have to humble yourself and become the least. And I love the first part. He talks about the little ones, which they can mean children, but in Matthew, it's always, he's talking about children, but he's also talking about Christians. There's many places, especially with the lost sheep. These aren't just little children. Many places you can see he's just talking about disciples. So whoever's the least, serve them, help them. Make sure your influence doesn't hurt them. If they go astray, go and win them back. Take the time to do all that. Just totally different than how we run. Now, some companies and some leaders in governments have been influenced by this. And there's a story about George Washington. It's George Washington or one of those guys. I'm pretty sure it's George Washington. And some guy, I'm going to butcher the story. Some guy's painting this fence. He's got these guys painting some fence. There's something that needs to be painted. And one of the guys can't do it. So this guy who's like a commander, He's like, who can I get to do it? And George Washington comes up and says, get out of the way. And he starts painting. I just butchered. That was the dumbest version of that story. I swear there's a better one on the internet. But it's the guy that goes out first. It's the guy that will lead the charge. It's the guy that will talk to anybody. Lester's not here. He's the sheriff, and he'll talk to anybody. He could be the king of Sioux Falls. And I think the sheriff's the closest you get to the king. I think he's higher up than the mayor because he's got a gun. But Lester will talk to anybody. Doesn't matter what kind of a criminal. He'll talk to the high, he'll talk to the low. That's a pretty good example of kingdom. That happens when people are influenced by the kingdom. They don't usually ever get that from just the world. We were, when we lived in the East, I'm going to shut up soon here. We were in the East, in China. It was communist country. Everybody's supposed to be equal. It was the most divided by sex, macho, ordered, like if you're wealthy or you're high up, like it's a shameful thing to hang out with certain people. It was so divided. And they had a culture that claimed it was going to completely erase all that stuff, and they were so much worse than us. We have all kinds of stuff going on here too as well, but we could just tell some of the Christian influence. Okay, guys, the kingdom's insignificant. It looks insignificant, but that He's got a better way. He's got wisdom, the wisdom of God, wiser. The weakness of God is wiser than the more powerful, wiser than the wisdom of men. I'm butchering that too. I'll read one more. 1 Corinthians 1:22, for consider your calling, brethren, that there were not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble, but God has chosen the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, and God has chosen the weak things of the world to shame the things which are strong, and the base things of the world and the despised God has chosen the things that are not, so that he may nullify the things that are, so that no man may boast before God. But by his doing you are in Christ Jesus, who became to us wisdom from God, and righteousness and sanctification and redemption, so that just as it is written, let him who boasts boast in the Lord. The Corinthians couldn't accept Paul. They had a hard time receiving Paul. And part of the reason was Paul, I used to think he was so arrogant. Now I know that he really got this humility of Christ. He was an old man with a stick. He didn't show off, didn't talk fancy. And they had a hard time receiving it. Now you think about this yourself. Who makes up churches in Christianity? The Christianity that has influenced you. And who are the people who influenced you the most? Were they high up politicians? Were they super connected? Were they really, really rich? I bet there are some fishermen. Probably, they're ordinary people. Not politicians, not Hollywood people, not super highly educated. Ordinary people tend to get it. They're the ones that tend to get God. And so think of this, you can take this home and meditate on this. How would this affect all these principles about the kingdom? How would this affect my evangelism, just how I relate to people at church? You can meditate on that this week. Have a great Sunday, guys.